I'm going to call a special called meeting to order. It's February 8th, 2023, 7 p.m. I appreciate everybody being here. We do have a couple of items that have come up that are not on the agenda, but we'll get the agenda knocked out first, and then a couple of other items, and then we have a closed session for personnel. So the first item of business is the animal control ordinance, and it's my understanding that Chairman Page, you and your committee met today. You have a report you'd like to give?
Did we need to amend the agenda to add those?
We're all here, we're good.
Okay. So it's not our first meeting. We didn't just meet today and just come here. It's our second meeting, so. First of all, I want to thank everybody. I know we're a new committee, but we spent a lot of time on this, together. Our last meeting was several hours long. We went through it thoroughly. I want to thank the staff, Ms. Daniel, Town Manager, Philip Norbeck, the mayor for meeting with us with the county, Chief, who's been there to answer questions and give feedback. We believe that the committee has recommended that this ordinance go to public hearing on the 27th. It's a 3-0 vote. The ordinance handles everything council talked about, stiffer penalties for violations. An animal control officer, its powers and duties, an animal shelter, or multiple animal shelters, and establishes licenses so we can identify the animals.
I want to clarify that shelter part, that we're not building.
We're not building one. We're gonna have one that's a designated, like it would be the county, but if they're overflow, we could have agreements with other counties to send our overflow to.
Because the meeting you had with the county, as I understand, was they're agreeable now to bringing.
We have a tentative, we've come up with a tentative agreement with the county, for access to the animal shelter. Which, as you know, it's been a hard thing to do in the past, so, we were able to come up with that. And of course, we can make agreements with others for overflow. Again, the main portions of it is a lot of it's administrative. Our current code's 11 pages. This is 21. Most of that is administrative. It establishes, Mr. Miller was concerned about tethering of dogs. That is, would be outlawed for more than 1 hour and 24 hours of a period, or if the property owner is not home. So that when dogs are tethered, they become vicious and territorial, and we're trying to stop it from when they break loose attacking.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
you have a 3-0 recommendation?
We have a 3-0.
Do you have a motion to go to advertise for public hearing?
That's right. Yeah.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, a motion is to advertise for public hearing
Okay.
for the 27th of February. That we advertise that the ordinance would go into effect immediately upon approval, except licensing, which would become effective November 1st.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion, Mr. Miller?
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Something about, I seen in here, any person who had a dog as of 2005.
Yeah, so that's a copy of our current
Any
ordinance.
person, okay, 1425B.
Yeah.
Any person who on February the 1st, 2005 was lawfully keeping more than the number of dogs and cats permitted by this section shall be entitled to continue to keep all such dogs and cats.
Until they die.
Yeah, but the dog, they would have had to have before 2005 when we enacted this ordinance. It's called the grandfather clause.
Talking about having 4 more? Is that what you're?
No, so before 2005, this is our current ordinance. It's in effect right now. That was copied over. If somebody has a dog, and they had 5 dogs in 2004, they're allowed to have that because they're grandfathered in, and it wasn't the law at the time. So, but I don't know if there's very many dogs running around.
But if one had passed away,
Until they
can't
got
add
down
They
another.
can't
to-
add. They can't
to
add.
the limit.
That's right.
Yeah,
It says they can't add if one.
I would think that's kind of null and void at this point, I would think.
that's how it reads.
Well, there's some people who do have 15, 20-year-old dogs. I mean,
Yeah.
it's rare, but we wanted to leave it in there because
Until
another you
I
know,
have an 18-year-old cat.
there you go, yeah.
So,
I got a 15-year-old dog.
so if y'all help me figure out the right route to go, okay? So we have a motion and a second, and we can discuss. Do we want to get most of the questions and answers done about the ordinance this evening?
My only
Or do
question
you
I
need
have, and I
more
forgot to
time?
ask you this afternoon, Chris, has Tessie weighed in any at all?
It's gonna go
Got
to,
a copy of the original draft, this draft, we're waiting until the council said, hey, we wanna move forward, and then, and we talked about it at the committee meeting, we sent it to Tessie tomorrow morning.
and if she comes back with something, we can always lessen penalties, we can make it more strict.
Make it more strict, yeah.
Is this is new to this portion, even though I've been here a year. Is this appropriate to take action for in a special called meeting?
Yes, there's 7 of us here, we can take up any.
No, I mean, just the general consensus for special called meetings and emergency meetings is things that are pertinent time basis, which I was under the impression we were meeting about the DBI position, because it had a pertinent time. I thought that ordinances and the other things on the list were more informational.
Well, I could be wrong, but my understanding is, we can call a special call meeting and take up any items that we wish. And with that being said, when we have 7 members, we can take up anything, any item at all. And that is my opinion, that would protect you in case you let's say you and Eric really wanted to, I don't mean to pick on y'all.
Yeah, you're fine.
But you just couldn't, you couldn't make a meeting. All right, and then we pop something up that we've been trying to beat you on, or they've been trying to beat you on, okay? It's for every member of council's, benefit. What I don't wanna do is, if I have a chance to trim a agenda on a meeting, then I don't want to be here 10:30 at night, so.
That makes sense. I'm just,
So-
I would also.
from my reading of Robert's rules, I just remember something about them talking about emergency meetings, only
Emergency
talking about
meeting would be
topics
the-
that
we
were
Right, we did,
pertinent.
emergency meeting, we didn't give the 3 days notice, you know.
in
it
special,
was-
I'm sorry,
but,
special and emergency.
But I didn't, if you'll get with me later, let me read that. I'm a learner, I'm still learning this stuff.
If I may though, when he called the special meeting, this was put on there at the same time, so there was a notice of the proper 3-day. Number 2, council did make it its number 1 priority to, it's a number 1 issue. And so that's why we've been working so hard over the last month to get something in front of you that we think works for everybody.
I agree that council made it its number 1 priority. I just have concerns that if we're having a meeting on a night that's not normally scheduled, and we're having a special meeting, that maybe we should save the things for public input that aren't of special or emergency nature for public input on.
Well, I don't know about you, but I think people getting attacked by animals is
Hold
a
on,
special
hold on,
emergency nature.
hold on just a minute. I have the floor.
Yes, sir.
I do not wanna cut you off. I'm just stating my opinion.
Yeah, go
That's
ahead.
what I think a public hearing is for. If, I would like to see the council comfortable enough to move forward to that. Now, if you want to wait to do that because you haven't had time, or you have more questions for the chairman or whatever, that's fine. But I think what we're doing here, in my mind, is neat and in order, and it's legal. Mr. Van Orbeck, do you have a problem with it?
Or you guys wanna proceed?
But I'm not, there's no legality here about us taking it up in a
No, I
special
think
call.
if everybody's here, you can do it. I mean, and modify the agenda if you need to. We talked about Tessie reviewing it, I think that's gonna, I'm sure she's gonna have revision, there's no doubt. But you can still make next week's newspaper and the 22nd newspaper, for public hearing on the 22nd.
So if Tessie revises something, like Chris said, as long as it's not more stringent,
Then what's advertised?
Yeah, we can take away, we can't add. Yeah, yeah.
well, I'm fine if we proceed as long as, if she comes up with a large amount of changes, whatever, because I have no clue, legality wise, I know
We
nothing.
could always have another public hearing.
Well, no, I mean,
We can change
it
it.
just gives us more time to look at it to see what her revisions are.
That's right.
If that's the route y'all wanna go, you know, we can do whatever's best.
And what was what's the purpose of the November? Just out of curiosity.
Well, because the state law says that, on the licensing fees, when it's enacted, they have 90 days to get the licensing.
Gotcha.
And November 1st, whenever you buy a license, let's say you come in, you get an animal on November 1st, if you get a license that day, it's good for the next year.
Gotcha.
And so what we need is time to get an animal control officer and get them through training, which we believe is gonna be a police officer. So we believe November is enough time to get the tags and also get him through training and all that.
And that's something, that's not, if we were to say, hey, let's move it to January, just to make it easier timeline wise, that wouldn't be a big deal.
Well, November 1st is, I don't think it would, but if you do it November 1st, 90 days comes out to what the state says the license fees are due, which is January 31st. So, I mean, it comes out, I mean,
Okay.
it just matches up.
Yeah.
For the section 1456, spaying and neutering for
What
to
page?
adoption, page 9, is the, when it comes to the spaying and neutering, does the county already have a rule on the books for animals that end up in their shelter that they're gonna do that? I'm trying not
So-
to take any additional cost that the county's already agreed to pay for.
Well, this is state law and it can't be changed. The way the county gets around it is they give a certificate, and they have to go get it neutered and then send them proof that they did it, but they give them like an SPCA certificate. But this is state law. They have to be spayed or neutered before adoption.
Okay,
And so we can't change it, but we can do the same alternative the county is doing, like, give a certificate out. Go through
Okay.
the program.
So just
does
add,
this need to,
go ahead.
if this is already state law, does it need to be included in here? I'm not trying, I
It
don't know how it works.
clarifies it.
If we're going to have an adoption program, it gives, well, here's the thing, when you write an ordinance, do you want your animal control officer or whoever your administration is going through local, county, and state to find it, or do you want the options all to be in one place where they're gonna review? It's gonna be much easier for our officers.
My only hesitation is like other town ordinances, if we're charging per a town ordinance, then that puts the legal causes on us, correct?
I'm sorry?
We are charging somebody with a town ordinance, that puts
Well, they
the
can't
legal
be-
causes on us, correct?
That's an administrative code. Nobody can be charged for that. That's an administrative code. That's something that we have to do upon
Well,
adoption.
either way, if we're stating it, that we're gonna do this, I'm just making sure that we're not doubling up something that's not already,
Right, our plan is to have an adoption process for our animals that are impounded, and so we have to have that in there, because we have to follow state law.
okay, and
It's
when
just
you say,
administrative.
when you say for the whole plan, you saying that we're gonna do an adoption process, or are we gonna lean on the county animal shelter to have an adoption process?
Well, when you send a inmate to jail in Prince Edward, he's there under our local code. Let's say you send him under our local code. We don't do that a lot, but a lot of places do. He's in jail under your code, so,
Yeah, and that was what I was trying to avoid with
So-
having repetitive, to where if we're charging them under our code, like you're saying, are we gonna be incurring the cost of spaying and neutering, or,
when you impound an animal under your code, it becomes your animal after 5 days if it's not picked up or claimed. So then you would wanna adopt it. So you're gonna need an adoption program, or you're gonna put them down, or find a place for them. So, you can put them down humanely, which this code gives us the option. You can get them to SPCA, you can get them to a rescue,
okay,
or you can adopt them. And if you're gonna have adoption process, you need to have the state procedures in there so that people who are doing it, which will ultimately be our animal control officer, and will be working with the county.
I'm just trying to, and I apologize for asking a lot of questions, it's just a
No,
lot.
it's fine.
and,
I
I
wouldn't
know
want
it
to-
was just voted on tonight, so I'm trying to play catch up
I want you to
and
ask
understand the process.
all the questions you want, sir.
So the overall plan is for
That's
us to
administrative
have
code.
our own adoption policy and our own animal control officer? Is that what the,
We're gonna have our own animal control officer. Maybe I need to explain this a little better. We as citizens pay the county for animal control.
correct?
Okay, but we only pay them for county and state law, okay?
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the power to enforce our town ordinances. So if you want an at-large ordinance that stops, because you've had it for a long time to stop animal attacks, the only way you can enforce it, is by having your animal control officer, if you want to prevent. Or you can be reactionary and just have the police write a ticket for the ordinance. We've tried where the police just write a ticket, and that seemed to be working. So we said, okay, we'll have an animal control officer out actively looking for at-large dogs, trying to get them back to their owner. That's why we have licensing, so we can identify them. He picks them up, identifies the dog, gets it back to the owner, we keep it out of the shelter.
Okay,
But if we can't identify it, we gotta get it to the shelter. And at that point, we would post it on our Facebook or our webpage, hey, this dog was found, see if we can get someone to claim it. But after 5 days, if no one claims it, it becomes our property. And after that, we've gotta figure out what we're gonna do with our property. We're gonna adopt it, we're gonna try to get it a home, we're gonna try to get it a rescue, or we're gonna put it down.
okay. I'm just trying to make sure that we're not taking over county responsibilities.
No. The county's responsible to adopt their own dogs. I think it'll be a collaboration together.
If I may interject.
Yeah.
We met with, we'll be talking about that in a little bit. Mr. Norbeck and I met with Chairman Bowen and Supervisor Rourke and Mr. Ted Cosper. And what I perceived they wanted was to have a 1 through 5 for the town and a 6 through 10 for the county. So we would partner together. Is that what you took out of it?
I think the easiest way to describe it is, those things that are county or state, this county will continue to enforce. If you notice from the first version to this version, things like rabies requirements, things like, for example, the
Dangerous dog.
dangerous dogs, vicious dogs, that's been taken out. So we're back down to administrative issue, and I told the folks earlier, the big ticket issues that are gonna be changes that you'll see, we still are gonna enforce running water. Big change is gonna be that this ordinance does not allow people to chain up dogs in their yard anymore. We're gonna have to have them inside, or we're gonna have to have them in an appropriate pen, okay? That's a big change for folks. And then the other big change that we're not currently doing, or we don't currently have on the books, is that it would be a tag or a decal or a fee, $10 per animal, that people would have to pay, and the animals would have to display with a collar and a tag.
Or $5 if you're 55-year-old or senior citizen.
$5.55, and I think there's also a microchip exception.
No, the microchip exception is if they don't want to have the collar for like their cat. Prince Edward does microchipping for $25. It's a program. You don't have to be a resident of the county, and they said they'd be happy to take. Some people don't want to put a collar on their cat, but if your dog's out running large, it's going to need.
Yeah, I've
a
had
tag.
8 collars on my cat now, and they get them off every single time.
Yeah.
While we're on the topic of tags, how do you envision the enforcement of this working?
So we're not kicking in doors, but if we come across a dog that doesn't have a tag, we're gonna try to identify the owner and get it back to them. This ordinance says, hey, when we get the dog back, it's their responsibility to prove that the dog's licensed. If they're not, then they have to get the license right then.
Okay, so you're envisioning dogs at large without tags rather than
At
Joe
large,
Schmo walking his dog down the street. We're not checking him for tags? Or
we're not stopping and checking, but if there's no collar, animal control officer has every right to pull over and say, hey, your dog doesn't have a collar, does he have a tag? And they're able to investigate that. But
You're saying walking the dog on a leash with a collar.
Yeah.
on a collar, but
Yeah,
that,
and I
but
don't-
say that collar doesn't happen to have a tag on it.
I don't see us pulling over checking that. Is that
I
the
would think he's
spirit?
under care and control, but I would also say, under this law, if you want to get technical, he could stop. It'd be his discretion and say, hey, your dog doesn't have a tag. Is your animal licensed? And if they're not, then under this code, they would have to get that license, go down to town and get it.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Now,
And that's just in case for later, if the dog does get out at large, we're able to identify it. I'm
I
sorry.
mean, I understand. I'm just
We're
trying
not-
to.
okay, you
understand
said all
the process.
dog and cat license for $10. Okay,
Except for senior citizens, they're $5.
Okay,
That's
okay.
right.
but my thing is, with thousands of cats in Blackstone, you think we're gonna be able to enforce that?
Well, if we come across an animal, here's why it's important to get your cat tagged. I'm gonna tell you, I'm not saying that we can be 100% and get them all, but we're pretty good about our borders and being able to patrol it and see what we see with our own eyes. But if you don't, we're gonna work, the plan is to work with outside agencies, 501c3s, to do spade, trap, and release, trap, neuter, release of the cats, because of the feral cat problem. We don't want to pick up your cat and it goes missing for 2 weeks and it comes back spaded or neutered. So that's why it's important for us to be able to, when they do trap them, they can scan it for a microchip, or if they've got the collar, hey, this is Jake Allman's cat. We're going to release it. And then we take the feral cats out, or the other cats that maybe run around loose that aren't claimed to get spaded.
There is a cat issue, but
Yep.
my concern is the monetary liability when we get 60 cats in our traps. What do we do? I mean,
Well, we're gonna, like I said, that's, the idea is that we're catching it's gonna be a nonprofit doing it. We can't do it by law. We can't put traps up. It's, there was a House bill last year for it.
Gotcha.
It didn't get taken up yet, but there's strong support. There's a little bit of opposition.
but like you and I discussed today, what happens when?
We're not gonna be out chasing
What
cats.
happens 90 days, and well, we can't trap them to begin with. So that's
If we trap a cat, if the nonprofit comes in and traps a cat and we can't identify it, they're gonna,
Is it our responsibility at that time, once that nonprofit traps that cat? Is it our responsibility to then pay for the spade and neutering?
I mean, you can donate to any nonprofit, but I mean, they get funds from other
But I mean,
places.
this
Yeah.
doesn't spell it out to where
No, we
it's
have to pay
okay.
them. We're gonna try to work with them, try to get them to come.
Absolutely, yeah.
Here's the thing, and the other problem with this is, and there's another side to it. Everybody's complaining about the cats. They're all over their cars, they're in their trash, they're messing with, I got a lady call me last week. This cat comes up their back porch almost every night and sits there, and the dog's on the back porch
Going crazy.
going crazy every day. So there's two sides of the story. We want people to be responsible and license their cats, because we are going to get some programs in here to start trapping cats and give them spayed and neuter and re-release them. Because when they're neutered, they actually keep other feral cats out of the area. The population declines. So we do want to work with that. But is our animal control officer going to be out chasing cats every day? No. But if it was my cat and I didn't want him spayed or neutered or messed with or gone missing for 2 weeks, I'd license it.
Is our goal,
Now, I'm sorry.
that, is our goal that once this program is up and going, that the one officer that we've discussed for 2 years now that would take over an extra responsibility, this would be the full-time position, or would he still patrol the streets and?
You want to take that
My
up?
understanding is still be a patrol officer like we proposed 2 years
Because I mean, to be honest, I think once everything's caught up, I don't think it's going to be a full-time. I don't think it's going to be a 24 or 12-hour shift full of just patrolling for.
More responding to calls.
And I'm gonna tell you, I don't think we're gonna be at the beginning taking a ton of animals out to the shelter either. Chief and Sheila say that they generally there's somebody who knows somebody whose dog it is. This ordinance written to get it to it says upon apprehension but before impoundment to identify the owner as best you can. So that involves a small investigation. Contacting the county.
I 100% agree with all the fines and when someone's dog actually messes up, dog, cat, whatever it be. The only thing that scares me, and I haven't read it, the only thing that scares me is that the responsibility that we take on as the town of Blackstone. I'm scared that we may not be able to take it all on.
I think the only caveat Chief has said about doing this was, in the budget coming up, when we talked about the finance committee, he wanted to have that extra officer added to his budget. It's in his budget this year, we just haven't had the revenues that we anticipated. We applied for a COPS grant that we didn't get this past year, that was paid salary and benefits, I think, for 3 years for a police officer. We have not hired that officer. It's our expectation to request police employment to authorize us, and council to authorize us to advertise for a position that would start in July, when the budget starts.
Then that's what makes me concerned is that are we taking all of this officer's duties and placing it on the new one, and the new or the officer that we currently have that takes over, then he just has animal control duties.
I think at first there's gonna be more time committed to animal control than there will be later on. I do believe that.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we discussed that he would still respond to like theft at Dollar General or Walmart or
And people are gonna call
investigations
that
like that.
cats and dogs
Yeah.
and, you know, I'm sad to see, and I know Jennifer Daniel will probably kill me for saying this, but the spay neuter release, you still got these cats running around.
Yeah.
Just maybe not procreating quite like they were, but, and the county animal control officer, to clarify some statements that have been in the paper, the shelter has not been declared a no-kill shelter. The shelter is not by policy a no-kill shelter. By standard, as Ted Costin said, they adhere to no-kill standards, which are 85% of the animals are adopted out,
I think he said 90.
90%, and the reason being that keep them eligible for certain grant opportunities. Whether they get those grants or not, I don't know, but it has not been designated as a no-kill shelter by the county board or by staff. It is a standard that they want to keep so that they can make themselves eligible for further.
Right, and to his credit, he's right. There are the cats still run around, but they're not feral. They're more tame, and the population decreases as you're doing it over time. It's a longer-term
She
solution.
did say that they will take,
Yeah.
depending on capacity, and all this is predicated on there being room in the shelter. Access to the shelter, as Ted said, is predicated on if we have room. If we get room, and she said she had 10 runs.
She's got 10 runs, and I think another 5 or 8 for cats. And the new one will be like 22 or 24 runs,
And remember,
but-
feral cats, they do not take feral cats.
and that's why spade, trap, neuter becomes important because
If
they
it's,
become more tame to be able to take.
Completely unsocialized wild cat, the county will not take.
So if I'm going back to what we had discussed, and I know a lot of this is gonna be public here and stuff, but we had discussed in the previous, account and finance committee meeting, animal control officer, if you were to hire a new one just straight out, we're not gonna do that obviously, but existing police officer and animal control, that's $6,200.
That'll be covered by license fee easy.
And then, but we also have to go and figure that you're obviously gonna have the additional police officer at 45 and then 61 total.
Well,
But and that's fine, I understand that that's gonna happen. But is there no way we're talking about another code enforcement officer? If we're already saying that this new officer, or not the new officer, the current officer that may take over the duties of animal control, not take over duties of code enforcement as well. If we're gonna take him pretty much and tie his hands with animal control, is that not mostly what code enforcement is?
No, code enforcement is if you got a refrigerator outside on your backyard with 2 washers and dryers and a couch and electricity run.
I just
Yeah,
feel like
you know.
Chief's gonna end up having an officer that's idle a lot more than what the taxpayers really pay for. And instead of us hiring another code enforcement, let's just say this animal control, this existing police officer, all of his duties will be new duties. And if we're hiring a new officer, then
He would go to the road.
he would go to the road.
I think the budget's gonna dictate how many.
Oh, absolutely. That's why I'm trying to kill more birds with one stone.
I think an animal control would have different, I mean, a code enforcement officer is a totally different field than animal control, though. I think a code enforcement officer and a police officer could probably be merged, but if you're, I'm not sure how animal control, I mean, it depends on how,
Well, the animal control guy's already a police officer, so that's
Right,
what I'm saying
right.
is, I don't know. It's something to just be talked about. I'm just throwing ideas out.
I mean, you're trying to save money, I get it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I-
Save
our
a total
position
of
on the-
62,000 a year.
Our position on the ordinance is that we're covering his increase in salary with licensing.
Correct.
And that you're looking at a police officer additionally anyway,
Yeah.
because of needs.
What are the costs of the licensing?
It's $10, and if you're a senior, it's $5.
I mean, the cost of the tags.
Like getting that actual
cost of-
tag stamped or whatever.
I mean, are we
They're
just
cheap
breaking
metal.
even at $10 per case, or we,
Yeah, I mean, the $10 is the max you can charge in the state. You can't go above it.
well, if we're breaking even, then what's the point of the tags?
The tags are cheap. They're not. You don't have to. You don't need a machine. They come pre with a serial number on them in the year. That's all. They're not that.
saying before I mean, we're essentially double taxing constituents, being that they already are supposed to pay a county tag.
They're not paying tax to have their local laws enforced.
That's correct, but if we can do this at a very small increase with a combination position with an existing police officer, then are the tags more trouble than they're worth?
Yeah, you're making your officer's life easier. They're not. No, they're not. You're making your officer's life. You got to think about your officer in the field working. So you're not in the field working. You need to be able to identify the animals. We need to identify the animals. We have animals here that aren't vaccinated. That happened at Clay's with the dog that killed your cat. Wasn't vaccinated. When they come to get their license, they have to show their rabies certificate. Then we know they're vaccinated. We give them the tag. It helps keep the public safe. It helps the animal control officer identify our animals, get them back quickly.
Well, I
got a
think,
question.
go ahead, boss.
You know, okay, so these people that got bit by a dog, okay, we got an ordinance in effect now. How does that cover them per se?
I don't think it's the one that touches really that dangerous dog.
That's already
That still
state.
stays with the
This is
county.
more of the animal control officer is a prevention, okay? If the lady gets bit by a dog, we're gonna run out and give her a ticket. That's what we're doing now. It's reactionary. This is the animal control officer out looking for dogs running around, dogs that aren't licensed, dogs that are being trained to be vicious by being tied to a tree. These are prevention tactics. The people have said, we need you to do something because what we're doing isn't working. So what we're trying to do is put an ordinance together that has smaller animal control than most localities, but hits those major things that cause dogs to get out and attack people. And so what you're looking at is a prevention aspect of it.
Will any of this assist, any of these new ordinances assist in helping instances such like happened at the Garden Center where
That's what I
the
was
individual
bringing
gets
up.
tickets, but then they all just get thrown out?
Well, one of the things I think, if you look at our ordinance, if I'm a judge looking at the ordinance I have now, this thing ain't written very well. This ordinance is put together well, has the administration, the penalties get thicker. I can look at it as a judge and say, hey, they're serious about animal control. You guys said 0 tolerance. I wrote it for 0 tolerance. And, sorry, go ahead.
No, okay, now, this person, you get, okay, my dog bites this person, you take me to court. Now, with this lease, no, with this code or whatever rule, would that enhance the owner of being responsible for this
It does-
person's injuries?
It does enhance it. Well, I think they already are responsible statewide anyway, but the dog bite itself would be a dangerous dog. That would be handled by the county. We'd have them there. Our animal control officer would be able to write them for the dog running at large, care and control, failure to keep care and control, They're probably a nuisance as well. We have 3 options to cite them, and all 3 of them come with the penalties, and they get worse every time. If the dog's out running again next week, it's a higher class misdemeanor. It goes from
I'm
4 to
So
just-
if
3.
if people's are being irresponsible with their dogs and they're running at large, what makes you think they're gonna go get a tag at will?
You know, that's a violation too. I mean, they don't do it, that's fine. They don't get a tag, and we find out they have a tag, and the dog's out running large, they don't get the tag, they're gonna get a ticket for that. If we gotta go to court again, the penalties get worse. We gotta go to court again for it, it gets worse, and that's the whole point.
Or
I'm all about some penalties, and I like penalties,
Yeah.
like, because this is a problem. We have dogs running at large, we have dogs biting people, it's a problem. But what I'm trying to avoid doing is
Well-
double taxing citizens that are following the law, because I'm pretty sure those are the only citizens that are gonna go and voluntarily get a tag. And is the very
Well, that's
small
why-
amount of money that we're gonna collect with tags worth the trouble for the average
you have
citizen to have to go get them?
That's why you have an officer out there seeing the animals that are out, seeing what he can see with his eyes. If there's no tags on them, he's gonna confront the owners and say, hey, we need to get you a tag. Or if your dog's running large, he's gonna identify it, get it, or get the dog up the street to the shelter. They can't be identified. It's called being proactive. It's called being out there on the streets and getting those dog license.
So we are stopping people walking their dogs without tags.
If it doesn't have a tag, that officer, I'm not gonna lie to you, the officer has a right to pull over and say, hey, does your dog have a license? If it doesn't have a tag on. And then there's, just like, if you're driving a vehicle and committing an infraction, and there's probable cause to pull you over, he has a right to pull you over and see your driver's license.
I understand, I'm just trying to get the
But
general.
it's his
the general-
discretion, I wanna put that to you. The animal control officer doesn't have to stop them walking their dog and say, hey, you don't have a tag. I think it goes against the spirit of the law.
I mean, the main
I don't-
purpose of the tags, as I understand, is to help identify the owner when they're at large.
And to make sure
I
that
mean,
their
if you care
dog has
about your dog,
shots.
you're gonna want it to have a tag,
Yeah,
so
that's
that,
right.
yeah. I
And-
mean, so if it gets
and-
loose accidentally.
And to prevent rabies outbreaks. Make sure the dogs have shots.
situations like such happen at the garden center. They're the ones that concern me because the owner willingly forfeited the dogs, so they become town property pretty much immediately. So that $10 that they did not pay, we don't get anything of it because they're not gonna come pay it. So then we're stuck with 3 dogs, and I'm like, what in the world? Because
This-
I'm
this
just worried that we're gonna have an influx of animals. And
Well, I don't think so, but let's say he does that, right? Okay, we're charging $35 to take that dog to the animal shelter, okay, if he's coming under our ordinance. Now, yours, that was a dangerous dog, so it's gonna go under the county. But if we were writing it under dangerous dog, we could recover our costs under the ordinance I had.
if he was just running at large and he said, all right, well, fine, just take the dogs, then that wouldn't be dangerous, correct? That would just be running at large.
Be running at large, improper care and control, because the dog ain't running at large until it's off your property. You failing to keep it under care and control is a separate offense. So you have multiple options to write them under, or write them under all 3 or 4. You write them under nuisance and other things. So it gives the officer tools it needs to deter the behavior.
Well, I think there's a lot of, I like a lot of stuff in this ordinance. I think it's really good work. I do. However, I'm not quite comfortable advertising, being that it was just voted upon. This is really the first time that I'm seeing it after it's been approved. And, we're talking about a tax increase at a special meeting. There's a lot of stuff lining up, and I understand if there's some disagreements with that, but that's just my position.
Well, there's no passing of a tax increase. We're sending it to a public hearing.
There's a tag,
But we're
it's not passing
that
yet,
here.
but we're advertising for a tax increase without any, on a special meeting
I'm sorry.
without,
That was on
where
the,
the general public wouldn't have expected it. We just advertised this what day
I
we
mean, it was in the
advertised?
paper today. I
But
think it was
it'll be a
written
public
on.
hearing where they can come to.
That's true, and
And we're gonna advertise it twice, and I'm sure people are gonna let people know about the public hearing on the 27th on the issue. People can come. You're gonna be able to hear them. We're not passing any tax tonight. We're just sending the public hearing to hear what the public has to say. You got 2 more weeks to read it. If you want something taken off, give me a call. I'm gonna be honest with you, and I appreciate you saying it was good work. I've called you, and we've talked about it, several times, and I think you can look at this final product and see that I've taken some of your advice into consideration.
yeah, and I appreciate that. Again, I think this is great work. I think it's very well written. I think it looks great. It's just,
I understand.
this is the first time I've seen it where it's been fully approved in its final form, and we're asking for a vote on the same night.
Well, it just happened to be that y'all set a special meeting up after our meeting. We said it was a good opportunity to get in front of the public and hear what they have to say. I mean, that's all we're doing.
I think you made your position
Yeah,
clear.
I'm all through.
Okay, all right, but I do have a motion and a second on the floor. So, any other discussion or any questions?
The material looks very good and thorough. My only concern may be that we have to be fair to all citizens. We can't stop one and don't stop the other. And we can't police Brunswick Avenue, and the only reason I'm saying that because we talked about that before, and not do Main Street and stuff like that. So whoever takes this position has to be well-rounded and fair to all the citizens of Blackstone, not just one particular area. And if you stop one person, for me, for not having my dog on a leash, will they stop you, Mayor, if you're walking on the next block over? So that's all concerns I have about this, but it looks really good.
I did read
Thank
that the Pooper Scooper ordinance is in here, so we need to make sure that's
Yeah,
enforced.
it is in there.
I saw that too.
I will say this, Ms. Williams, I can agree with that. That would be the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. It's called equal protection of the law, and that's equally applied. And I would think that our officers do that today, and that they would continue to do that.
Chris, how do you know all these laws?
Saying.
If I could,
This is hellacious research.
if I could address Ms. Williams' concerns, please. I appreciate what you're saying, and it's a great statement, but until, I have made a commitment to see that the ordinances that you pass, the policies that you set, and your will is carried out. And I'm not gonna, it's not gonna fly with me like what you said, and it's a great point. You know, we have to treat everyone equal.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm gonna demand that from staff. I can assure you that I'll be on top of that.
And I would think that we're,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
I gotta say, this is,
I mean, you keep it in
We want
mind
it.
too,
this is down to the dirty.
it wasn't written to the point to try to catch someone walking the dog without a tag. It was really about, I mean, it started out about dogs at large, as we all know. So, I mean, that was the main target, and I think it encompasses a whole lot of other good.
Yeah, the question with the dog, and he's right, but the question with the problem with the dogs at large is how do we prevent it? And if people know that we can identify their dog run at large and they're gonna get a misdemeanor ticket, it helps a lot.
This
And-
is what I would like to do, okay? You have reservations and you'd rather wait, is that correct?
That's correct.
Then I'm gonna ask you, would you like to withdraw your motion, or would you like to let it stand?
Now, the motion is to take it to,
Take it to the
Public
public
hearing.
hearing.
The only reason I have reservation is I would like to hear Tessie. That's the only.
But procedurally, I have a motion and a second, and I'm gonna have to call for a vote.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will.
Unless he,
Yeah.
you know, that,
Yeah, that's how this works. I understand.
okay. Do you want to withdraw your motion, or we're gonna go forward?
They're asking if you wanna withdraw your motion, for legal review, or do you wanna go forward and hear what the public
well, I
has to say?
seconded the motion, but I mean, I honestly believe it's
Or Ms. Wynn, I'm sorry, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead,
All
yeah.
right.
Say what you were saying, then. You
All
believe
right,
what?
since we do have, we've had a great amount of discussion, I'm gonna ask for a roll call vote, beginning with Mr. Allman,
I was last time.
the month.
Oh, that's right. It is the month. No, nay.
It is a new month.
Trying to slip out of
It
something.
is a new month,
It
actually.
is a new month, so
Yep.
it's Wes.
Stand corrected, we'll start with Mr. Gorman.
I didn't forgot it was February.
Yay,
Put pressure
Yeah.
on somebody else.
yay.
Yeah.
Nay.
Nay.
Motion carries 5-2. Next item on the, then we'll, Mr. Van Orbeck, you will do the appropriate.
I will do my best, and please
And just-
interject if I forget something.
Get Tessie, please. I mean, as soon as she can. Yeah.
We'll-
And
we're
again,
gonna
nothing
take
against
care of-
Chris's ordinance at all. I
I'm not a
just,
lawyer, I'm not a lawyer, I can tell you
I
that
don't
right
know.
now.
It sounds like it over there.
No, but I'm not, I make mistakes, and that, we want it reviewed, yeah.
You could do some
The notice in the paper will be next Wednesday, and we'll get it to them no later than Friday or Monday, one or the other.
I'm not a lawyer, we want a review. I would say, I don't believe there's anything in here that's against any of Dillon rules, and anything that anybody else isn't using already.
Moving right along, we've set this to bed, okay?
Yep, yep.
Mr. Van Orbeck, I will ask you, going forward, if you can be at the podium when you're talking to council. There's citizens that can't hear you, I can't hear you when you tape, when you're here, or we should look into a microphone.
And I have emailed the person that installed all this. to get this
It would be a good,
working.
just a microphone.
Yeah, it's not a matter of I want you here, I want you to be heard. People, and I want to hear too. I go back and look at the tapes, and several people do, and I just would ask you to be next to a microphone.
No
Okay?
problem.
Next item of business is, town manager is gonna report on a meeting that y'all authorized, for us to meet with chairman of the board and Supervisor Rourke and Ted Costin, and I'll let manager report.
On Friday morning at 9 o'clock, the mayor, myself, Steve Bowen, John Rourke, and Ted Costin, the county administrator, sat down. It was a meeting that was put together by the mayor and Steve Bowen that they had agreed to try to open lines of communication. I do think it bore some fruit with the animal control portion of it, because we really had been running into just nothing but headwinds from the county staff about using the animal control building. And then a subsequent meeting later that afternoon, there was a much softening of the tone. We've tried for almost 2 years to get into the shelter without success, and as a result of our discussions on Friday afternoon, the county administrator was much more agreeable to letting that go on. There were several items on the agenda, and Mayor, please assist if you have any additional. One of the things we talked about was water, and county-wide water, and where are we at. And I'll be honest with you, 100%, I don't know where we're at. Jake and I will be again meeting on February 22nd at the Crew Airport Conference Room, I think it is, with the, I don't know if Burkeville's going to show up or not, but certainly with the county and with the town of Crew to continue water discussions. I think the county has made it pretty clear that certainly they don't want to talk in closed session about water authorities and all those things that potentially have been discussed previously. I don't know where Crew stands. Crew is really the crucial decider on what they want to do. The town of Blackstone has always been since this thing started years ago. We've got a resource. We've got water. We're blessed. We have a withdrawal permit that would allow up to 9 million gallons a day as a safe yield. The town of Blackstone is doing less than half a million gallons a day. So there's plenty of capacity long term. The state facilities indicated they needed, some time ago, they needed 600,000 gallons a day of water resource. We told them we can do it. However, their intention was that they were going to bypass the town of Crew. And we indicated to the state that we're not going to participate in something that's going to bankrupt the town of Crew. Prince Edward doesn't have those same ethics, perhaps, and they jumped right on as soon as the state facilities indicated they'd be interested in going to Prince Edward County with the same effect to the town of Crew. Crew stands to lose a lot right here. We need the town of Crew to tell us, but one thing I do want to talk, and I'm bouncing a little bit around, but in the newspaper this past week, and Jake, he's been attending the same meetings I have, and the reason Jake's been going is he's the chairman of the Fire and Water Committee for the town. Okay, so you know. The county administrator indicated that the parties involved had asked that the county take the lead and agree that take the lead, and they asked us if they could take the lead. We agreed, but the lead didn't say anything about a regional water authority or a water authority, any of the above. It was to take the lead to begin the work with our legislators and folks at the governor's office and staff perhaps at the Department of Health to try to begin that process to undo what Prince Edward County has already done and what the state Department of General Services done as far as getting water from Prince Edward. There was no discussion other than Ted had mentioned, would you guys be interested? That agreement had nothing to do with them taking the lead. I was astonished when I read in the paper because it really was not the case, okay? Everybody agreed that this is Crew's Pickett moment. And if 1995, when the federal government announced they were going to close Pickett, it was all hands on deck. The county hired lobbyists. They hired public relations folks. They hired folks, and they took the lead. That's what I was expecting for them to take the lead, not to create a white paper and talk about water authorities and all that sort of stuff. It's that. Unless Jake has something contrary to say about that, but I don't think that was the case.
Nope, it was definitely hey, you take the lead politically, talk to the governor's office, talk to the legislators, talk to whoever will listen, and it wasn't anything about any kind of authority.
It just wasn't part of the discussion, and I know the town of Crew's not interested in that sort of thing, and I know Jay Scudder and Sean Davis, who's a council rep on these talks that we've had, have no intentions of doing that. And we certainly don't have any authorization from town council to pursue a water authority. I want people that read the Courier Record to realize that was a statement that is not accurate. It's not true.
I'd like to address that before you move on to the next topic, please.
Yes, sir.
continue, but I have several things when you're finished with your
Okay.
report.
Where are we at on water? We just got to sit down and talk to these folks because I think the state Department of General Services, which is the property management agency for the state, is intent on going to Prince Edward County and getting up to ultimately 1 million gallons of water per day from a non-existent water facility. Prince Edward County does not have a water intake, it does not have a permit, and it does not have a water treatment facility, and it does not have any pipes. It owns nothing. Okay? In the tens of millions of dollars, Prince Edward County would take out of resources that are available for legitimate water operators like ourselves, like the town of Farmville, other places that they've asked for to be included in these kinds of funding opportunities when they don't even have a customer. It's crazy stuff. And I'm kind of going over what the older folks on council probably already know, but for your benefit, Prince Edward County has swooped in and said, we'll take these facilities, and they promise them a very low rate, which our engineer says is absolutely impossible for them to do it. We've quoted the town of Crew a rate of $11, I think, and 47 cents. And if I'm a penny or two off, I apologize, but it's about $11.47 per 1,000 gallons for us to transmit it based on the capital cost of making these upgrades. That doesn't even include running the line to Crew. Doesn't include running the line to Crew. We were, in those estimations, making an expectation the state would still pay for that because they had proposed to pay for that at one time. Okay? There's a lot of work to do. If they go to Prince Edward and Crew loses them as a customer, it's in the millions of dollars a year of revenue that doesn't pay for health insurance or benefits or groceries or any of those kinds of things, sales taxes or anything in Nottaway County. They get shipped to Prince Edward County for no good reason, because there's a source here. We're able to do it. And it makes absolutely no sense for the staff at the county to be negotiating just to do such a thing, to take that kind of money out of our community and send it to Prince Edward County. It doesn't make sense. So I don't know if we have a three-way partnership, but we'll certainly keep on meeting. I think the Board of Supervisors has toned the Water Authority discussions down, and I think that it has tamped down some of those efforts by staff to go in that direction.
If you will, I have a statement, please correct me or augment, okay? I went to a Board of Supervisors meeting, I believe it was their last month, their regularly scheduled meeting. And I'm sure y'all read in the paper where Supervisor Rourke wanted to take the water issue off of closed session and put it on regular session, and I don't even think he took it up. But during the conversations, Chairman Bowen made the comment that he didn't want to go forward with a water authority if the towns didn't want it. Now, I don't know anywhere where we have gone on record. I'm going to ask you to do so in a moment. But I made it clear to Chairman Bowen that I couldn't for the life of me understand why in the world that the town of Blackstone would want to be part of a water authority that we wouldn't participate in but pay the bulk of the expense. So if a water authority is created, they have the taxing authority of the entire county, and the bulk of the taxes coming from this area. So I don't want to get myself in a position that if I'm asked again, I would like to know what the council's position is, and I would like to tell Chairman Bowen that we're interested or we're not. So is there any discussion about that?
You need a motion?
I would like to know where y'all are.
I move that the town of Blackstone, with the signature of the mayor, present a letter to the county that we are not interested in a water authority.
Second.
Local or regional,
All.
Any.
of any type.
Yeah.
Any
water authority.
Any water authority affecting the town of Blackstone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Second.
But would you amend your motion to also express that we are willing to be a part of the solution as a water source?
Oh, yeah, I mean, and I
A
think they
viable
know that,
water
but
source?
if it puts it
Yeah.
on paper, absolutely. I mean,
Right, we want them to
And when-
continue to keep looking at us as a viable water source.
and when the mayor says local or regional, or Philip asked, local or regional, I'm talking about, we got a water source right here in our county that has got plenty that can provide. Why are we gonna recreate the wheel?
Yeah, and I think every letter we send about it should say that we're a viable water source.
Absolutely, and that's fine, I'll amend it for that.
And the white paper
Talking
that,
about potential of a regional that's gonna be over what we already
Take
have.
customers away from us, in essence.
Talk
They
about double
they come
taxing.
into Blackstone and take customers from us.
That was Prince Edward's intention, the original motion that they asked, or resolution, I think, that was presented to the Board of Supervisors, said any and all customers in Nottaway County would be,
I'm the one who found that through FOIA, wasn't I?
I don't remember, but it's in there. When they presented it, it says any and all customers in Nottaway County, which I assume includes our customers in Blackstone, Fort Pickett, Fast C. It's just a ethicless approach by Prince Edward County. I'm
Why
shocked by it.
duplicating services? I mean,
Is there any benefit, before we make a decision on this, town manager, can you see any benefit at all for our locality in our position, not others, but to join a water authority?
I can't say a water authority, no, but I can only see that creating water territories, service territories, do make some sense. In the event Prince Edward County does serve the upper end, and that may ultimately be what happens, the crew decides that's what they want to do. If that's the event, we got to draw a line and said, no, Prince Edward is not going to keep on creeping down this way.
If we're not
To
a part
serve.
of that water authority, do we have the ability to have any say in that?
Well, I think we need to do that up front, and I think there are some sympathies at the Board of Supervisors level to protect the town of Blackstone. Remember, you have a territory for your electric system that we can't get out of. State Corporation Commission, State Supreme Court, everybody said, bam, this is your territory. And it ain't that big. It does come outside of the town limits, but not a lot. In fact, a good portion of the town of Blackstone is still served by Dominion Power, Southside Electric. Your water and sewer is where your long-term development growth potential is for revenues. It is not your electric long-term because you got such a compacted territory. So you got to protect yourself. If the high school's the last service that the town of Crew provides now, that needs to be the last one.
I think after hearing what the county has said, they're receptive and they understand our feelings. So that's why I feel like this letter is enough.
Well, I think it's the right, I just wanted to just
I
see
agree
if there
with
was
Mr.
any
Nash.
positive.
I was there. Now, we have failed to mention that we both left this meeting with a spirit of partnership and a spirit
yeah.
of cooperation, and I have to tell you, I was moved with the attitude, and so Mr. Nash has made an outstanding motion, and Mr. Almond has seconded. Is there any other discussion? This is important enough to me we have a roll call vote, beginning with Mr. Gormas.
I said, yay.
Yay.
Aye.
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 Thank you. Motion carries 7-0. Before we leave the water, the manager and I, we don't really have a clue with what Crew wants or where they're going. Would you like for, manager and I to reach out and the council president reach out and have a meeting to talk about water, similar to what we did with the county?
Is that not what we're doing on the?
I think we're already doing that. We have a,
That's what you, okay.
yeah,
well,
that's
let
what
me
he's
ask
been
you-
doing with the town of Crew and the county. Helen Simmons and Ted Costin from the county, and Sean Davis and Jay Scudder, excuse me, the interim town manager. Myself and Mr. Allman have been meeting, along with Mayor Welch from Burkeville, until they had kind of said, we're going to weigh our options, and we're looking at Prince Edward County.
Please forgive my ignorance.
No, you're fine.
The next topic was boundary adjustments.
Pardon?
That we talked about the county was boundary adjustments. Boundary adjustments.
There have been some discussions in the past about expanding the town's boundaries, and I don't know, it's very preliminary, very, very preliminary. There have been some discussions, some of the board members at Nottaway, when we've had this Cox Road discussion over and over about mandating water connections and that sort of thing. Even some of the Board of Supervisors said, why don't you ask us to do a boundary adjustment so that you can bring them in town so the mandated connection can be by the town council or by the town rather than by the county. Obviously, Cox Road area would be potentially a logical area to bring into the town limits. I don't know how that's going to fly with the property owners. We already have a written agreement with Nottaway County. I say written agreement. We already have agreement with Nottaway County that the town can take in the Nottaway Commons property at its discretion at a time of its choosing. Okay, as a result of negotiations, because they had really sold a piece of property that could not be served because of sewer capacities.
In this area for new members? Define Nottaway Commons.
Nottaway Commons is next to the bowling alley, between the main gate and the bowling alley. If you remember, 5 years ago, the county, and I'm saying generally 4 or 5 years ago, the county sold 70-plus acres to a gentleman from Miami, Florida, and he was a developer, and he was going to build a 400-room hotel and multiple single-family and townhouse-style development and have retail and all those kind of things. Well, 5 years later, nothing. And the county didn't put any conditions or restrictions on what he can do, so it's just sitting there. In the meantime, everything's happened at VUMAC and in town and all those kinds of facilities, so there's been the private sector has stepped up blessedly inside town limits to take on this project. But as a matter of what the county did, the county forgot a couple things. One, the board or the town council technically has to approve out-of-town connection. Something big like that, town council has to say go. Number two, our wastewater treatment plant is a 2 million gallon a day treatment facility. It's permitted or was permitted at 2 million gallons. When it was given to the town of Blackstone, the federal government, National Guard, military reserved 1.5 million gallons of that flow. We had 500,000 gallons of flow from the town that we could send for all sources other than the National Guard. And we were already bumping about 450,000 gallons of sewage. Their request was going to be take us in excess of that 500,000 gallon allocation that we had. And so sadly, they sold the property. They came to me and I said, can't serve them. Sorry. Well, we've already sold the property. I'm sorry, you can't do it because I don't have the sewer capacity. There's sewer capacity being unused at the plant, but it's reserved by the National Guard. So as a result, our engineer came up with a plan, an engineered solution with some recirculation pumps that would increase our capacity by approximately 10% to 2.2 million gallons, which would then serve their facility. And we took on some costs because by changing our permit, we had additional sampling and testing requirements that we are still having to do, and nothing, still nothing out there. But there is an agreement that the town can boundary adjust at minimum to the main gate of Fort Pickett on the south side of Route 40. Okay? There's been other discussions. There's one not too terribly long ago that I didn't mention to you, and it may have come up before the new council came on, where a gentleman on Courthouse Road would like to have his property brought into town, that Eric Paul gentleman. There's been properties like Cole Harbor. They're really struggling with that road, and it's not a town problem, and I don't know of a better solution other than if it were to come into town, it can go into our system, but the property owners out there have to pay for that road to be upgraded. You can't go to the folks that live on Sullivan Street or 2nd Street or Main Street and say, we need to hit you for more taxes so that we can pave Cole Harbor, which was a private road subdivision that was permitted by Nottaway County back in the 70s. We have water, sewer, and electric to it, but it's outside town limits, and it's a private road, and it's just gone to pot. Now, there's some work that's been recently done on it, but it's bad again. So
I don't think the people in Cold Harbor would mind.
we've had people from Cole Harbor ask us if they would do it. The road is the problem. Water, sewer, electric already there, but we've got to figure out how to get that road paved without taxing everybody that's already here.
Another area that you spoke of was where the new inn in Black.
And there's a piece of property when the original VUMAC property, if you remember, actually included that frontage where those houses been built. Okay, it included the College Avenue 4th Street property that everybody thinks of as VUMAC, but it also includes, 40 acres over on Hungry Town Road where the Boy Scouts used to have camp. Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, if you remember, on the north side of Hungry Town Road, that was VUMAC property as well. Now, there have been, if you didn't know, the Planning Commission and Council has rezoned about a third of that property, maybe 25% of that property that lies within town to R2. It had been zoned
Park's open.
public open space, and this is it right here. This is that portion of that property that was inside the town limits. But that same property goes all the way down to the Anderson place.
There's a
where the
ways.
guy has a house down there. That piece of property, this has now been rezoned to R2, which will allow single-family, duplex, or townhouse-style development, okay? But the remainder of the property is still within the county. I think they have some softening of their rules when you have water and sewer available, and water and sewer are accessible, they're at the site, they'd have to be extended at the developer's cost. But the beauty of that property there is we have a lowered, more condensed density that would be permissible, and it is inside our electric territory. Okay? So that would be potentially another logical area for you to bring inside the town limits. We're talking about all these things. I have not addressed this publicly, nor have I addressed it with any of the residents, and you may get feedback after YouTube gets downloaded.
The two that concern me, Cox Road, it'd be one